Change is often awkward, and Ratchet and Clank Tools of Destruction sure as hell was an awkward transition phase for the series. But as we all know, good things take time, and it was necessary that Insomniac took the time to lay the foundation for the story they wanted to tell going forward with the crack in time. As I mentioned in my Tools review, the Future Saga was the chance for Insomniac to tell a larger, overarching story throughout a series of games, rather than each game having a unique story. In this instance, Tools was Ratchet's origin story, A Crack in Time is basically Clank's origin story, and this game also deals with everything Ratchet and Clank have learned about themselves in the last few years, and what they intend to do with their lives following this new context added. It's a shame they apparently had to compensate for this by ditching the really cool home screens. I mean, what is this? What the fuck? But before we get into the rest of the review, I'd like to thank you all for your comments on the last video. Leave a comment to be featured in the next one, and the biggest of thanks go to my patrons Stin, Dotman, Jesse, Brian, Angel, The Foe3, Vexavis, and another new patron, Terror of Talos. The game picks up with Clank's father narrating the story, explaining how while he was born in the Solana galaxy, his soul, I guess, was created much farther away. We transition back to Clank, accompanied of course by Dr. Nefarious. It's kind of funny to think if you didn't play Quest for Booty, you'd just be like, whoa, wait, what? And if you opened almost any other Ratchet and Clank game with a Clank section, you'd have me going, no. But Clank's gameplay improved big time with the last entry, but here it's even better. You don't get to truly see how good it is until later on, but even here, just the base Clank gameplay is such an improvement compared to previous entries. Clank's attempts to escape Dr. Nefarious are futile, however, and Lawrence subsequently puts him back in a coma.
A crippled little rotter.
Little bit of praise I gotta share. Remember in my last video I brought up Tool's horrible use of music when Clank gets kidnapped? It's all here he gets knocked out, and you get this really impressive big cinematic zoom out of the Great Clock with appropriate music playing. It gets you excited to go on with this adventure, but it's not overtly happy. It's minor, I know, but it's the little things like this that make the presentation of the game as a whole feel so much better and less phony than the last game. Meanwhile, we cut back to Ratchet and Markiplier venturing through space looking for Clank, but while doing so, some sort of time rift damages the ship.
Hang on, shifting to evasive maneuver.
Sending them crashing down to a planet below, but not only do they somehow not die from this crash landing, time itself, by some miracle, also just stops. And from here, the duo look for a way off the planet, and also just try to figure out what the hell's going on with that. One of the things I really love about Crack is that it allows Ratchet and Clank to individually shine. Because of them being apart, Insomniac put themselves into a corner where they were forced to evolve their gameplay. Granted, their way of doing this for Ratchet was to give him hover boots, which kinda renders Clank useless, but I'm not complaining. You can zoom all over the place and wall bounce. It's so much fun. I wish you were able to use your weapons while using the hover boots, but yeah, that'd probably be insanely overpowered. Insomniac also takes a different approach yet again to weapon upgrading in this game, as while you can buy your traditional weapons, you also have Constructo weapons. These allow for tons of customization aesthetically, while also letting you customize exactly how the weapon functions. You can find different mods for the weapons throughout the galaxy, and each mod can change how your weapon fires, the kind of ammo it fires, and what the bullets do once they make contact with an enemy. I think this system works a lot better than the Raritanium one from Tools because not every upgrade is the exact same. I also love that there's cinematic previews for each weapon, that way I know which ones are probably going to be crap, but luckily, Crack doesn't really have many bad weapons. There's plenty I like. Also, the guy that does voiceovers for these kind of sounds like Gilbert Gottfried.
I'm pissing and shitting and coming. Only a grumble now.
There's some returning classics from Tools like the Negotiator, the Magnet Launcher, and Mr. Zircon, who was a device in Tools but is now just a weapon. But then there's new favorites like the Sonic Eruptor, which burps enemies away, the Cryo Mind Glove, which freezes enemies in place, and by far my favorite in this game is the Rift Inducer 5000, which rips open a black hole that sucks in any nearby enemies. It's easily one of my favorite weapons of all time. And as I said earlier, on the flip side, Clank's gameplay is even better than it was in Tools by a good margin, which was already substantially better than any iteration of Clank gameplay we'd seen before. While Ratchet's of course is very gun and platform heavy, Clank's goes all in on puzzle aspects. The big highlight here is Clank's tape recorder puzzles, where Clank can record clones of himself to perform tasks throughout the Great Clock, and it is so much fun. I absolutely love these puzzles. They really put your brain power to good use. Not only that, but his mobility and combat are improved as well, as he gets a Chronoscepter, which is like his equivalent of Ratchet's wrench. It can also be used to deflect enemy fire, repair debris for bolts, and you can also use it in these planet puzzles where you have to fix time irregularities, which is kind of boring, honestly, but it's not that bad. Oh, and somehow I almost forgot to mention that Clank can also slow time with time bombs. His gameplay is so much fun. I can't believe how far we've come. Even the space sections are vastly improved from Tools. Not only do you engage in space combat, but you're also able to fly around to different planets. And no, I don't mean through a menu, I mean like you can physically fly to different planets. It's so cool. Additionally, you can also check out little moons and planetoids to hunt down Zoni, which will upgrade your ship, or you can find Constructo mods, gold bolts, and more. You can even fight Nefarious's forces, which are scattered throughout different sectors of the galaxy, which as a whole makes the universe feel more lively and gives Nefarious credibility as a competent villain. A competent villain! What a concept! The world building as a whole with Crack in Time is much stronger than it was in Tools. Tools was a bit of a step in the right direction, and Crack in Time pushes the envelope even further as you interact with way more civilians. Granted, compared to the NPCs of the first few games, I think they're pretty boring, but I'm just so glad to have worlds being really fleshed out again like this beyond just seeing the smuggler from time to time.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
A good portion of the time you're meeting with the Fongoids, who, as I said, aren't super interesting, but I laugh at their stutter because I'm an idiot.
These troops were herding us into detainment camps.
Although I unfortunately and heartbreakingly have to say, I do not like the change in music for this game. David Bergot, I think that's how you say it, had composed the music for every Ratchet and Clank game up to this point, even these two, so to hear the change with Crack in Time was so disappointing. Admittedly, I didn't find his soundtrack for Tools amazing, but it was a lot better than this. It leaned in a more cinematic direction, of course, but still had that classic Ratchet and Clank vibe. Crack in Time's music, however, is pretty underwhelming because of how generic it is. I mean, for the cutscenes, sure, it works great, but for the actual gameplay, it's incredibly forgettable because a lot of the tracks are just ambient noise. You can have energetic, dynamic music while still being atmospheric. We've done this before. And yeah, the game has changed, it's not exactly the sound they're looking for anymore, but like I said, even Tools music veered in the more cinematic direction and was a lot better than this, so I would have just stuck with that. The worlds themselves are an odd case. I have a lot of fun playing this game, but I really struggle to remember many of the worlds from A Crack in Time, and I think the bland music really does have a big part to play in that. Another part of it, I believe, is simply that, yeah, there's some pretty cool settings, but there's no amazing ones. I don't know, they just don't have a hook that really grabs me like previous levels in the franchise, like Sargasso, the Obani Moons, Grelbin, the Gemlik Moon Base. There's some interesting gameplay elements like the new hover boots and a couple levels featuring time travel, which is really cool, and I'll get to that later, but yeah. Again, of course this game's a wonderful time to play. I guess I'm just saying none of these levels would be making a top 10 or maybe even 15 of my favorite Ratchet and Clank levels. But to be completely honest, I think the biggest part of that is because when I think of A Crack in Time, I don't think all that much about the fun I had playing it. I mostly think of how much fun I had watching it. Crack in Time's story is light years ahead of Tools of Destruction's. While on the planet Quantos, suddenly a subordinate army of Nefarious shows up threatening Azimuth for leaving his hovel. In the process, Qwark and a bunch of villagers get kidnapped, leading to Ratchet breaking into Lord Vorsalon's ship to set them all free, and also get some details on whatever the hell an Azimuth is. After the jailbreak, Ratchet heads to Torin 4 to meet with this supposed rebel, who turns out to be another Lombax. And his first instinct upon seeing Ratchet is to kill him. But genuinely, this is where the story of the future saga, for the first time, finally began to click with me. Yeah, the road getting here kinda sucked, but they make it worth your while. Alistair Azimuth actually turns out to have been Ratchet's father Caden's best friend, and has been hunting for the location of the Great Clock, explaining that the Zoni are the Guardians of Time. Although he's very reluctant to really elaborate on why he's searching for the clock or where the Lombaxes exactly are, he eventually does crack in a heartbreaking scene. Back in Tools, it was revealed that Tachyon was found in a frozen egg in Lombax mines long after the Great War between the Lombaxes and the Kragmites. As the sole remaining remaining Cragmite, the Lombaxes took pity on him, raising Tachyon as one of their own. Eventually, Tachyon learned of his origin somehow and hated the Lombaxes from then on, and used his intelligence as an incredible inventor to trick them. Azimuth explains that the Lombaxes were approached by Tachyon, who could aid in building super advanced equipment to protect the galaxy, so Azimuth granted the inventor full access to Lombax technology, as he was their head of defense or something, I forget. But once Tachyon was fully decked out with their tech along with his own ideas, he and his army he'd built quietly over the years obliterated the Lombaxes. And as Azimuth was the one who authorized the decision to grant Tachyon access to Lombax technology, he blames himself for the downfall of his race and was exiled as a result. This is why he so badly wants to find the Great Clock.
I can make it right, Ratchet. All of it. We can fix it. With the clock under our control, it'll be like none of this ever happened. Stay with me, and I promise I'll get your family back.
Admittedly, Azimuth is kind of a dumbass.
You must be some kind of a dumbass.
I mean, he let his guard down like this to Tachyon when pretty much everyone and Azimuth's best friend, who is Ratchet's father, were warning him not to trust Tachyon. You could even say that this almost sheer stupidity on Azimuth's part is bad writing, and I can't say I could really disagree with you. But for me, it just adds to the tragedy of his character because he really did fuck up so bad, which is why I find it all the more an extremely sympathetic motivation, and the structure of the story adds to the dynamics of all the characters involved that much more. Throughout the game, you're hopping back and forth from the perspectives of Ratchet and Azimuth trying to find the clock, back to Clank and Sigmund, who are at the Great Clock. You're repeatedly being told and shown that under no circumstances is time to be altered in any way, because it could have fatal consequences on the universe. Even if your intentions are good, it does not matter. The clock is not a time machine. It's simply a keeper of time, and you know it's only a matter of time before Ratchet and Clank meet again. This anticipation builds and builds because not only will you be so happy when they finally reunite, but you're also anticipating and possibly even dreading what the reactions of Ratchet and especially the guilt-ridden Azimuth will be when it's revealed to them that the Lombaxes literally can't be saved.
You realize that we are just hours away from reversing the greatest tragedy in the history of the universe. Your mother, your father, they'll both be right here, safe and sound.
It's so messed up to know that while they're so excited to be righting the greatest wrong in the history of the universe, they're actually, with each passing second, unknowingly leading the universe to its demise. And on top of that, even though, like I said, you're so desperately wanting to see Ratchet and Clank get back together, from Clank's perspective, you see that his father is leaving the Great Clock to him as his duty to protect. So even when they reunite, it could be short-lived. This whole time, you can feel this collision course just waiting to happen, and it kept me so invested for the whole game. On top of, oh yeah, Nefarious is there trying to mess with the clock too. I love the guy, but he's kind of just a third wheel in this story. Also slightly off topic, but I feel like Nefarious screams a lot more in this game. Legit, in this scene, he screamed every line. It's impressive.
Action! Lawrence!
Good lord, the lungs on that boy.
I know part of the punchline in Up Your Arsenal was how loud he is, but sheesh. Anyway, while Ratchet is building this fatherly bond with Azimuth, Clank at the Great Clock, with the help of his assistant Sigmund, is meeting his father Orvis for the first time. Well, kinda. Orvis's current whereabouts are kept a mystery, but with the help of Sigmund, Clank ventures into his own subconscious to connect with Orvis, and I really love his character. I just feel like for being Clank's father, they really got his personality down to a T. He's super endearing. Eventually, Clank and Sigmund reach the Orvis chamber, which is like the main control center for the Great Clock. Orvis entrusts the clock to Clank, but before he can finish what he has to say to him...
Is that my...
I'm sorry. Were you in the middle of something?
You son of a bitch!
So yeah, as for Nefarious and Lawrence, what exactly do they have to do with everything? Well, they crash-landed on the Fongoid's homeworld, and Nefarious eventually went on a spirit walk on planet Quantos from earlier, and there found out about the Zoni and, of course, the Great Clock. From there, he set out to gain control of the clock in order to create a reality where the heroes always lose. Yeah, that's the kind of motivation I'd expect from Nefarious. That's fine. Whatever. That works. Nefarious's return does tie into what happened to Orvis, however, as he was somehow tricked into meeting up with Nefarious and was tortured into revealing the key to the Orvis chamber. But refusing to reveal any information, Orvis made himself vanish, and to this day, his whereabouts are still unknown. Or he might be dead. I don't know. Pretty sure it's unknown. Regardless, it appeared as though Clank had something to do with this whole thing, and that's how Nefarious got his hands on Clank. Yeah, the whole Nefarious part of the story isn't too great, honestly. At least he feels a lot more credible than Tachyon did, but thematically, he just does not fit in with the complexity shown between these guys. Eventually, Ratchet and Clank reunite at long last in a wonderfully climactic scene. Not only that, but Clank reveals the dangers of the clock to Ratchet and Azimuth. If this were the beginning of Tools, Ratchet probably would have told Clank to go screw himself, but after the whole Dimensionator debacle, Ratchet trusts him and advises Azimuth to leave the past in the past, but disgruntled by this, he quietly leaves. We then move into the final phase of the game where Ratchet and Clank confront Nefarious. Well, actually not before a filler level where you could travel through time, saving this Fongoid village from an invasion 10 years ago. It's a really cool level. I wish we got more like this in A Crack in Time. They entertain the idea of time anomalies on several occasions throughout the game with those Clank segments I mentioned earlier, and you find out about the whole Orvis disappearance through the use of time travel, which was really cool. And there's clever gameplay elements like you plant seeds in the past and then jump back to the present and use the vines to gain access to areas you couldn't before, but it all just kind of feels like a big tease. We had all game. We could have done cool shit like this, but we didn't. We ran out of time. And also, as cool as this penultimate level is, I believe this is the second time a Ratchet and Clank game has oddly had what is essentially a filler level right before the last one. Like, what was up with Koros in Ratchet 3 where you destroy the Bio-Obliterator, only for it to be revealed that, just kidding, that was a fake Bio-Obliterator. Now go destroy the real one. What the fuck? Anyways, you save these Fongoids and then go right back to the space station and battle Nefarious.
Look at you. Free for the first time in years, inches from your destiny, and what do? Run right back to playing backpack to a squishy. You're nothing but a pathetic sidekick.
We should hang out sometime. That's it. No one talks to Clank that way. When this is over, I'll back whatever decision you make. But first, how about one final hurrah so we can kick this guy's butt?
When I'm finished killing you, I think I'll rewind time. So I can do it again, and again, and again!
The fight itself against Nefarious is pretty decent. I'd say it's around the middle in terms of best to worst final Ratchet and Clank fights, just based off like the difficulty of the fight itself. But the atmosphere, the leaping from platform to platform of Nefarious's broken space station with the hover boots, and the stakes of it all are what really make it so great and memorable. It has a strong sense of finality, and credit where credit's due, I really love the music here. The battle eventually moves to Nefarious and Lawrence's escape shuttle, where Nefarious fucking dies. Lawrence takes an escape pod as the shuttle is left hurtling towards the remains of the villain's space station, and all looks bleak until...
Ratchet, come on! You're gonna have to jump!
10 seconds until impact. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The gang then return to the Great Clock as Ratchet and Clank prepare to say goodbye, Clank understanding that it's his duty to protect the clock at all costs. Azimuth, ridden with guilt, still wants to use the clock, but when Ratchet politely reassures him there's no need for that... Oh no.
Where are you going? This is your responsibility. You can't just walk away. The Lombaxes need us. Don't walk away from me! I said stop!
Holy fucking shit, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's honestly crazy how apathetic I was towards Tools of Destruction's ending, but this As Sigmund holds off Azimuth for as long as he can, Clank breaks for the Orvis chamber and does a big no-no and goes back in time with the Great Clock by 6 minutes, just long enough so that he can save Ratchet. And for some reason, the plumber in Clank's subconscious was the one to foreshadow this idea earlier in the game, just like how the plumber basically saved them at the end of Tools. It's pretty cool to think that the first person Ratchet and Clank met in this universe is kind of the one who ultimately saves it, for whatever weird reason. Clank saves Ratchet and he and Azimuth go on to have the final battle of the game. I love the emotional weight behind this fight. Azimuth eventually does set in motion the clock to send everything way back in time, but like we've been told on numerous occasions, this is not a time machine. But Azimuth is too blinded by guilt to believe or even try to understand that. He feels like he has no other choice than this, and even says that because Ratchet's trying to stop him, he's just gonna kill Ratchet now and it's no big deal, because he'll just go back in the past and save him then, which is just a really great line selling how badly Azimuth has snapped. You know, as if that didn't put that over enough already. Eventually, you of course defeat Azimuth, but by this point it seems too late to undo the damage he's done. Finally seeing and soaking in the carnage he was once again responsible for, he fully understands the gravity of the situation, springs into action, and sacrifices himself to save the universe. Oh God, I need a cig. Ratchet reluctantly leaves Clank, but at the last possible second, Clank has a change of heart, entrusting the Great Clock to Sigmund, which is just so wholesome. And we finally get to hear what Orvis was going to say before Lawrence cut him off earlier.
The clock, much like time itself, is a gift, and not to be tampered with. But like any father, my only wish is that my son does that which makes him feel whole.
You are an intelligent and logical being, Clank. But intelligence and logic would have been wasted gifts without honor and loyalty. I am proud to see you came into those on your own. So, should the clock be too small for your plans, I pray the cosmos light the way towards a future you yourself design. And remember, the universe has a wonderful sense of humor. The trick is learning how to take a joke. The universe has a wonderful sense of humor.
Sometimes the universe has a cruel sense of humor.
Take a joke.
Yeah, being responsible for the death of my entire race sure was funny. Wow. What a fucking ending. I also love how this was like an inverse of the first game's ending, where Clank thought he was being left behind and now the roles are flipped. Christ almighty, I can't get over how good this is. I know I've really criticized the direction the series has taken with the Future Saga, more so the way they got here, but damn, I'd be lying if I said this ending didn't make it all worth it. Tools felt like this half-baked Pixar presentation, but credit where credit is due. I think Insomniac really learned from the last game and really stepped up theirs for this one, as here the vision they seemingly had feels much more fleshed out. It makes me wonder if they somehow just made the story of this game into an actual movie instead of the 2016 or 17 abomination we got, how much better this would have been received. I'd think considerably better. After all, this is also a considerably better game than Tools of Destruction. How the fuck does Tools have better reviews?